also in chemistry.
Yes.
You went to medical school, didn't you?
Yes, I did. As many doctors do.
But during your entire studies, you never...
Your Honor, this is rehashing his credentials, however.
Your Honor,
Coming from leeway.
but at no time during your studies, you never took any classes in criminology, did you?
That's actually not. We do extensive research on the criminal mind, especially when you specialize in psychiatry in medical school, which I did.
So it's your testimony today that you've taken extensive courses in criminology, is that correct?
Objection, mischaracterization of testimony.
Sustained.
Your testimony is that you have taken courses in criminology before.
On the mind of criminals. On the mind.
Was that during your undergraduate, or was that during your medical school?
Medical school and residency, we learn about various individuals being able to control their anger and what happens after and why this occurred. And sometimes these individuals are under criminal scrutiny.
So you've had a lot of experience working with the criminal mind. Is that what you're testifying to?
I've had a lot of experience.
Objection, Your Honor. This is mischaracterization of the evidence. In addition, we are now rehashing his qualifications. He has never once stated that he has any experience in criminal psychiatry. In fact, he said that when asked questions about the court. The counsel has not offered any reason why he should be allowed to attack the witness's qualifications at this point in time. At this point in time, since the witness has been offered as an expert, his veracity and only his credibility are at issue, not necessarily not his qualifications.
Your Honor, based on the objection I had to opposing counsel allowing the defendant to test the MMPI, it was my understanding that I would be allowed to ward the witness, or at least question him a little bit as to his credentials to interpret such things. I'm simply trying to lay the foundation to determine whether or not the jury can permissibly use his opinions based on the MMPI results, based on his knowledge, training, experience.
Well, I think I rule that he is the qualified expert already. I'll give you a little leeway as to how much of an expert he may be.
Thank you, Your Honor. Just to be clear, you are not certified as a forensic psychiatrist. Is that correct?
This is correct.
And you're not certified or have ever held yourself out as a forensic psychologist. Is that correct?
I have not held myself out to be a...
You're familiar with Dr. Chris Johnson's periodicals, correct?
Yes,
on the MMPI?
Yes, I am.
You've read those?
I've read numerous articles that are very similar.
And Dr. Johnson was one of them, wasn't he?
Yes.
And you used that as the basis of your opinion. Isn't that correct?
Yes, I used everything in his evaluation to make a basis of my opinion.
I'm going to read a portion of it and I'm going to ask a follow-up question. If using a computer-generated printout of the MMPI-2 results, the forensic psychologist should use information gathered from all sources in clinical judgment in interpreting the results. Computer-generated results provide hypotheses about the individual based on the scores. In other words, the forensic psychologist must actually use clinical judgment in interpreting the results of an individual's MMPI. Wouldn't you, as you just stated, you are not an expert in forensic psychology. So in essence, you have misapplied this test.
Objection, argumentative.
Overruled.
In fact, you said computer exams are not accurate from many articles that I have read, in fact, and Dr. Johnson computed his results by hand. In fact, many statistics and articles show...
Objection. Move to strike. Lack of personal knowledge.
Counsel.
Lack of personal knowledge as to what, Your Honor? He's testifying as to what Dr. Johnson's treatise says, not what Dr. Johnson knew. What Dr. Johnson wrote in his treatise and the witness has read, he is more than willing, more than able to talk about on the stand.
Your Honor, he's talking about the administration of how Dr. Johnson administered the test. testimony during a direct examination as to how he would have known that, Your Honor.
Gentlemen, I mean, where is this argument going here? Is what I'm trying to figure out here.
Simply trying to show that the witness does not, in fact, have the correct credentials and knowledge, training, and experience to have validly interpreted the MMPI results, Your Honor.
And of course, counsel, you say he does.
I say he does. I also say the court's accepted him as an expert, and this is still on time.
Correct me if we're wasting our time here. I said that he is an expert. The jury can infer by the doctor's testimony how much weight to give his testimony or credibility for credentials. So I'd say, counsel, let's move on from questioning him about his background and so forth, and questioning him about his opinion about the results.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Yes, Your Honor. Court's indulgence. Now, as you were just testifying earlier, Dr. Chicana, you testified that on the left-hand portion of this chart, between the 6, 7, and 8 is an inverted V. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And in the psychiatry world, that's what they call a psychotic V, isn't it?
Yes.
Again, as you testified earlier, you relied on Dr. Chris Johnson's treatise.
Which was done by hand.
We'll get to that in just a second. An inverted V pattern on the 6, 7, and 8 scales is sometimes called a psychotic V and is typical of persons who are suspicious, hostile, unable to resist impulses, and perhaps subject to thought disorders, delusions, and hallucinations. You agree with that statement from Dr. Johnson, don't you?
I agree with that statement.
And in fact, on this chart right here of John Dress, we have inverted V on the 6, 7, and 8 scale, don't we?
Yes.
Now, with regard to the right-hand portion, you testified that some of these scales indicate that the validity of the test might be affected. Is that true?
They don't only indicate.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you. What did you say?
They do not only indicate, but a range from 30 to 35 on the right hand of the scale, where it's called the K scale, shows another word for this examination. The MMPI is the Faker test, and it is not only examines an individual's ability to take an examination to see if he can or cannot control his emotions, but it also examines.
And just to be clear, are we talking about the K scale or the F scale?
We're talking about on the right hand side, the K scale, right here, that V.
Well, I'm pointing to the F scale, the F right here, which is always at the right. The K is in the middle. Are we talking about the F or the K?
We're talking about the K.
Which is all the way at the right.
I'm sorry. We are talking about the F scale.
And the F scale is the one all the way to the right here. Is that correct?
Well, no, not all the way to the right.
Go for a little.
And it's your testimony again, you're familiar with, going back to Dr. Johnson's treatise here. I'm going to read and ask you questions. Now, you also testified to having reviewed the gunshot patterns, is that correct?
Yes.
And used those as part of your evaluation?
Yes.
You also reviewed the Twitter messages.
Yes.
And based on the reviewing of the Twitter messages that John Drath saw, you concluded that someone, let me make sure I get this right, such as John Draft would be quite angry by seeing those Twitter messages. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah, when you looked at the bullet patterns, you concluded that it was the product of a rational person of sound mind, didn't you?
Yes.
In fact, you concluded that this would be the product of a professional assassin, didn't you?
Yes, an individual can be angry and still calculating, or in control of his emotions while he's angry, not completely.
But just so we're clear, a person would be quite angry after reading the Twitter messages, and a person would have to be rational and of sound mind to have shot the decedent as the way he did. Is that correct?
Compound.
Overruled.
Yes.
Now you spent 30 minutes with John Draft, didn't you?
Yes, I did.
And 30 minutes was all you need.
If I did not have the evaluation from Dr. Johnson from before, I would have needed more time.
And during that time, you asked him a lot of questions.
Yes, I did.
But in no time did you ask him whether he was on medication? And in no time did you ask him about whether his parents had any history of mental illness?
Well, I had everything I needed on those grounds.
Well, yes, it's a simple yes or no question. Yes
No,
or
I
no?
did not.
Did you not? And you did not discover any history of mental illness within his family, did you?
No, I did not.
No further questions.
Dr. Chacon,